He sat in the corner of that Manhattan ballroom, silent, furious, and humiliated. Every whisper in the room was about him. The billionaire no one dared to pity had just been stood up in front of everyone. His fiancée, the woman he built his world around, didn't just cancel. She vanished. An hour before his brother's wedding rehearsal dinner, and now every camera in the room was waiting for him to break. But instead of anger, he smiled, because what no one knew, not the press, not his family, was that this humiliation would lead him straight to the love of his life. Before we dive deeper, tell me, where in the world are you watching this from right now, and what time is it where you are? Drop it in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories reach, and if you believe that sometimes life's cruelest moments can hide your greatest blessings, then don't just scroll, subscribe. Because the story you're about to hear will change how you see love, power, and destiny. Liam Whitford never believed in fate, only in contracts, strategy, and timing. But that night, everything he controlled began to slip through his fingers. The rehearsal dinner should have been perfect. His younger brother's wedding was the biggest social event of the year. The Whitfords were royalty in the business world, and failure wasn't an option. Yet, as he stared at the empty seat beside him, every camera flash reminded him of one brutal fact. The woman who was supposed to be there wasn't. She'd left a message. 3 words, cold and final. "Don't look for me." Liam clenched his jaw, the veins in his hand tightening around the wine glass. His mother whispered something about embarrassment. His brother tried to hide his smirk. The whispers grew louder, crueler, feeding off scandal like wolves. He stood up without a word. The press turned their cameras, waiting for a statement, but Liam just buttoned his jacket and walked out into the rain. The city swallowed him whole. By midnight, he was sitting alone in his penthouse, staring at a phone he refused to touch. A billion-dollar empire, and not a single person he trusted enough to call. He had spent years building walls of steel around himself, and tonight, they finally trapped him. Then came the buzz of his intercom. A voice. A woman's. Nervous, polite, unfamiliar. "Mr. Whitford, I'm sorry to disturb you. I'm here about the event. You asked for a florist?" Liam frowned. He hadn't called for anyone, but her voice carried something he hadn't heard in years. Warmth. He pressed the button. "Come up." The elevator hummed softly as it ascended. Liam poured another drink, expecting another vendor chasing payment, but when the doors opened, his breath caught. She wasn't what he expected, not even close. Her name was Sophie Marlowe, and she looked out of place in his world, damp from the rain, clutching a bouquet too simple for his taste, her eyes full of quiet defiance. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "The coordinator told me to deliver these tonight, for the wedding." Liam's silence made her uneasy. He studied her like a riddle he couldn't solve. Something in her tone, steady, unshaken, made him listen longer than he intended. He took the flowers. "You're late," he said. "I wasn't supposed to be here at all," she replied, "but someone had to show up." It was a small sentence, but it hit him harder than he expected. Someone had to show up, something his fiancée hadn't done. For the first time that night, Liam felt the corner of his lips twitch. Not a smile, but something close. As she turned to leave, he said, "Wait." Sophie paused by the door. "I might need you again, tomorrow night." She blinked, confused. "For more flowers?" "No," he said quietly. "For something far more complicated." The elevator doors slid shut behind her, but Liam knew one thing. This wasn't chance. This was the beginning of something dangerous. The next morning, New York City woke to headlines about the Whitford scandal. Runaway fiancé, broken engagement, billionaire humiliated. Every news anchor smiled as they tore him apart, but Liam didn't watch. He was already in his office before sunrise, suit sharp, face unreadable. The world could speculate all it wanted. He had work to do. Still, that sentence from last night echoed in his mind. Someone had to show up. By noon, he was supposed to choose a replacement date for his brother's wedding weekend in Napa Valley. His family's reputation depended on it. Appearances mattered more than truth in their world. His assistant entered timidly. "Sir, the PR team says we should move fast. We could hire someone, professional, discreet." Liam's pen stopped mid-signature. A paid actress? Technically, yes. He didn't answer. Instead, his eyes drifted toward the vase on his desk. Those same flowers Sophie had delivered the night before. Simple white lilies. The only honest thing in his entire office. Before he realized it, he was already dialing the florist number printed on the tag. A few rings, then her voice again, calm, unsure. "Bloom Studio, this is Sophie." Liam leaned back in his chair. "Do you do events outside the city?" There was a pause. "We've done weddings, occasionally." He exhaled. "How do you feel about pretending to be someone you're not?" Silence filled the line, then a cautious laugh. "That depends on who I'm supposed to be." "Someone who looks like she belongs beside me," Liam said, "just for one weekend." The quiet stretched long enough for him to almost regret asking. Then Sophie spoke, slow but certain. "I'm not sure you can afford the real version of me." Liam smiled for the first time in days. "That's exactly what I'm counting on." By sunset, a black sedan was waiting outside her tiny Brooklyn apartment. She almost didn't step in. Every instinct told her not to trust a man who could buy anything. But something in his tone had sounded less like arrogance and more like loneliness. The drive to the airport was silent. She watched the skyline fade, her fingers nervously clutching her purse. Liam sat across from her, scrolling through his phone as if this were just another transaction. But when their eyes met in the reflection of the tinted glass, something shifted. He noticed the faint scar near her wrist, the way she hid it quickly. She noticed the exhaustion in his gaze, the kind only heartbreak could carve. Neither spoke, but the silence was loud enough to make both of them curious. The jet engines roared to life, and as the city lights disappeared below them, Sophie realized she had no idea what she'd just agreed to. And Liam. He had no idea that the woman sitting across from him carried a secret that could ruin him. The cabin smelled of polished leather and quiet money. Liam Whitford sat across from Sophie, his posture calm, but his eyes calculating. He wasn't used to silence. People usually filled it for him, trying to impress him, flatter him, or beg him for something. But Sophie? She just stared out the window, as if the clouds had more to say than he ever could. After an hour, he finally spoke. "Why did you agree to come?" She turned slowly. "Because you sounded like someone who doesn't ask for help often. And I was curious what could make a man like that desperate." Liam's jaw tightened, but there was the hint of a smile. "I'm not desperate. Just practical. My brother's wedding is in 48 hours. The press will be there. My ex will be there. I need someone at my side who can keep them talking about anything but me." Sophie folded her arms. "And you thought a florist from Brooklyn could do that?" "Not a florist," he said quietly. "You." The words landed heavier than he intended. For a brief second, her guard slipped. Then she looked down at her hands, at the faint scar along her wrist, the one she'd caught him noticing earlier. "Okay," she said, voice steady again. "What are the rules?" Liam leaned forward. "Rule number 1, we act natural. People can't suspect you're hired. Rule number 2, you'll stay in the same suite but separate rooms. Rule number 3, no personal questions. About family or the past." Sophie raised a brow. "Sounds like you've practiced this before." "I've learned not to repeat mistakes," he said flatly. She watched him for a long moment. The surface confidence couldn't hide the fatigue in his eyes. This wasn't a man chasing love. This was a man hiding from something. "Fine," she said at last, "but I have one rule of my own." Liam looked up. "Go on." "Don't ask me to lie about who I am. If I'm supposed to act, I'll act, but I won't pretend to be someone fake." For the first time, Liam looked uncertain. "Then what happens when the truth doesn't fit the story?" She met his gaze without blinking. "Then maybe you're telling the wrong story." The engines roared louder as they began to descend into Napa Valley. Outside, the vineyards rolled like waves of gold beneath the setting sun. Neither spoke again, but inside the silence, something had shifted, something neither of them could name. By the time the jet touched down, they were no longer strangers. They were two people pretending to play a part, unaware that both had secrets that could destroy the script entirely. As the car drove them through the iron gates of the Whitford estate, Sophie stared in disbelief. Rows of marble fountains, lanterns glowing like fireflies, and servants waiting at the entrance. She whispered under her breath, "This isn't a house. It's a world." And somewhere behind the glass walls of that world, someone was already waiting. Someone who knew exactly who Sophie really was. The weekend had only begun, but before it ended, hearts would break, lies would unravel, and the billionaire would learn the truth about the woman he thought he'd hired. The Whitford estate was alive with wealth. Luxury cars lined the long driveway. Laughter spilled from the terrace like champagne. Photographers, stylists, and wedding planners moved like clockwork under the golden California sun. To everyone here, this wasn't just a wedding. It was a show. And Liam Whitford, the man who built half the skyline of New York, was the reluctant star. Sophie stepped out of the car beside him, the wind brushing through her hair. She wore a sleek emerald dress, simple yet stunning, borrowed from the wardrobe Liam's assistant had selected. For a moment, conversation stopped. Heads turned. Everyone wanted to know who the woman on Liam's arm was. He didn't flinch under the weight of their stares. He simply reached for Sophie's hand, his voice low, just for her. "Remember, everyone here lies for a living. Smile, but don't trust anyone." Sophie's lips curved. "That includes you?" He didn't answer. Inside, the house was even more magnificent. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls. The air smelled of roses and expensive perfume. A voice suddenly broke through the noise. "Liam!" A woman approached, tall, elegant, wearing a dress that cost more than Sophie's entire rent for the year. Her tone was sweet, but her smile was sharp. "Didn't think you'd actually show up. And with company?" Liam's jaw tensed. Charlotte. The name lingered like poison. Charlotte Davenport, the ex, the one who had left him right before his brother's engagement was announced. Charlotte's eyes moved to Sophie, her voice dripping with curiosity. "And who's this?" Sophie smiled politely. "Sophie Lane. She's with me," Liam cut in. "My date." A flicker of something, jealousy maybe, crossed Charlotte's face, but it disappeared as quickly as it came. "Well," she said, leaning closer to Liam, "try not to get too comfortable. We both know how temporary things can be in your world." As Charlotte walked away, Sophie exhaled softly. "Your ex?" "Among other things," Liam replied coldly. "Don't give her attention. That's what she feeds on." Sophie looked at him for a long moment. "You say that like you know the feeling." He turned away. "Let's get through tonight." But as they entered the ballroom, Sophie noticed something strange. At the far end of the hall, a man stood watching her. Not Liam, not part of the crowd. His gaze followed her with quiet recognition, almost disbelief. When their eyes met, her pulse stopped. She knew him. Her smile faltered. Her hand tightened in Liam's. And in that single glance, everything she'd been hiding threatened to come undone. He was the last person Sophie ever expected to see again. And if Liam found out who that man really was, the entire lie she built would collapse before the weekend was over. Sophie's world tilted for a second. The crowd faded. The music blurred. All she could see was him, Ethan Hale. It had been years, 3, maybe 4, but that face was carved into her memory like a scar that refused to fade. He looked different now, sharper, more polished, dressed in a tailored suit that screamed money. But those eyes, those same deep brown eyes that once promised her forever, were now staring at her like she was a ghost. She forced her breath steady and turned back to Liam, who was shaking hands with investors, oblivious to the storm brewing beside him. Ethan didn't move. He just stood across the room, watching her like he was trying to decide if what he saw was real. Finally, she excused herself under the guise of getting air and slipped out to the garden terrace. The air was cool, heavy with the scent of lavender and night-blooming jasmine, but she didn't have to wait long. Footsteps followed, slow, familiar. Then, Sophie Lane. Her name in his voice shattered the thin wall of composure she had built. She turned. "You shouldn't be here." Ethan took a step closer, his jaw tightening. "I could say the same to you. The Sophie I knew wouldn't be caught dead pretending to date a billionaire." She folded her arms. "You don't know me anymore." "Don't I?" he said, voice low. "You disappeared. No warning, no goodbye. I thought you were dead." Her eyes flickered with pain. "You don't get to play the victim. You made your choice." He frowned. "Choice? Sophie, you left after the accident. You vanished. No one knew where you went." She looked away. "That's because it was easier that way." For a moment neither spoke. The night buzzed with unspoken truths. Ethan stepped closer. "Does he know who you really are?" Sophie's throat tightened. "Don't, Ethan." He leaned in, voice barely a whisper. "Does Liam Whitford know that you were engaged to his brother?" Sophie's eyes went wide. She grabbed his arm, panic flashing across her face. "Keep your voice down." Ethan stared at her. "He doesn't know, does he?" "Please," she whispered, "if you ever cared about me." He pulled back, bitterness in his tone. "I did care. Still do. That's why I'm warning you, Sophie. If the truth comes out this weekend, you won't be the only one who burns. Liam's family doesn't forgive easily." Sophie's hands trembled as he walked away, leaving her standing alone in the garden shadows. She thought she could escape her past. She thought she could bury the truth under a new name, a new life. But the past had a cruel way of resurfacing, especially when it was tied to the very family she now stood beside. Inside, laughter echoed. Champagne flowed. The perfect wedding weekend continued. But beneath the surface, secrets were beginning to rot, and by morning, someone in that house would know the truth. Morning sunlight spilled across the marble floors of the Whitford estate. Everything looked perfect. Almost too perfect. Sophie stood by the window of her guest suite, clutching a cup of coffee she couldn't bring herself to drink. Her reflection stared back, flawless makeup, elegant hair, the picture of poise. But behind those calm eyes a storm was raging. Ethan was here. He knew the truth, and one slip could destroy everything. A knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she said, voice steadier than she felt. The door opened. Liam. Charming, confident, every inch the billionaire air. He carried 2 cups of coffee, smiling in that way that made her forget, for a moment, who she was pretending to be. "Thought you might need this. You were quiet last night." "Just tired. Big night." He nodded, stepping closer. "You handled yourself beautifully. My mother can be intense." She managed a faint smile. That's one word for it. For a brief second she felt it. Warmth, ease, maybe even something real. But that illusion shattered when Liam's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression hardening. "Excuse me." He turned slightly, reading a message, his jaw tightening. "Everything okay?" He hesitated. "My brother just landed early. I wasn't expecting him until tonight." Sophie's breath caught. His brother, Ethan, the very man who could expose her secret to the world. Panic surged beneath her calm exterior. She forced a polite smile, pretending to sip her coffee. Liam didn't notice. He was already calling someone. issuing instructions to prepare the guest wing, his tone clipped and authoritative. Sophie slipped out quietly, her heels clicking softly against the polished floors. She needed air. She needed to think. But when she stepped into the hall, she froze. At the far end stood Ethan, freshly showered, suit pressed, that same knowing smirk tugging at his lips. "Morning, Sophie. Or should I say, future Mrs. Whitford." She flinched. "Keep your voice down." "Relax. I'm just here for my brother's wedding. But it's funny, isn't it? Life's little coincidences." She stepped closer, whispering through clenched teeth. "You promised you wouldn't say anything." He shrugged. "I promised nothing. But you might want to start preparing for questions, because when Liam finds out the woman he's falling for once wore my engagement ring..." She cut him off, eyes blazing. "You left me, Ethan. You left me standing in that hospital alone after your father threatened to ruin my life." His smile faded. "You think I didn't fight for you? I came back for you, Sophie. You were gone." Two people bound by a past neither wanted to remember. Now trapped in a future neither could control. Before either could say more, Liam appeared at the end of the hallway. His eyes shifted between them. Sophie's flushed face, Ethan's smug composure. A subtle tension filled the air, invisible but sharp as glass. "Everything all right here?" "Just catching up. Old friends, you know how it is." "Right. Let's get ready. The rehearsal dinner starts in an hour." As Liam walked ahead, Ethan's gaze lingered. He mouthed 2 words before turning away. Sophie's secret was cracking at the edges, and by the end of that dinner, someone would start asking questions she couldn't afford to answer. That night, the Whitford estate glowed like something out of a dream. Crystal chandeliers spilled gold light over marble floors. The tables were wrapped in white orchids and gold trim. Every guest was someone: politicians, CEOs, people who thought power was just another kind of currency. But beneath the surface, something darker was brewing. Sophie arrived on Liam's arm, her smile perfect, her heart pounding. Ethan sat 2 tables away, close enough to see her, far enough to make her wonder what he was planning. Every laugh felt like a lie. Every toast tasted like danger. To family, to love, and to the union of 2 souls meant to last forever. Applause followed. Glasses clinked. But Sophie's hand trembled against her wineglass. Ethan was whispering to someone, a tall brunette seated beside him. She looked vaguely familiar, maybe from the tabloids. A model? A friend of the family? Sophie couldn't tell. Then Ethan glanced at her and smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that made her stomach twist. Moments later, the MC took the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we wrap up this evening, the Whitford family would like to share a short video, something from their archives." Liam leaned over, whispering, "You'll love this part. It's tradition. My brother always handles the edit." Sophie's blood ran cold. Ethan's edit? The lights dimmed, the screen flickered to life. Laughter echoed as childhood clips of the brothers played. Birthday parties, beach trips, graduations. Then, the footage shifted. A scene Sophie recognized instantly. A sunlit patio. A woman in a blue sundress laughing as a man kissed her hand. Her and Ethan. The video froze on Sophie's face, then faded to black. Silence. Cold, suffocating silence. Liam's jaw tightened. His mother's smile vanished. Dozens of powerful eyes turned toward Sophie. "What was that?" I don't know. That wasn't supposed to..." Ethan rose slowly, pretending confusion. "Oh my God. That must have been an old family clip. Didn't realize it was still in there." His tone was calm, almost too calm. Liam turned to him. "That was you, Ethan." Ethan shrugged. "Yes, years ago. We were engaged briefly. I assumed everyone knew." The room was spinning. Sophie could barely breathe. Whispers rippled across the tables, rumors, questions, judgment. and Liam's gaze, once warm and steady, now looked at her like she was a stranger. "You were engaged to my brother?" Sophie's voice shook. "It was before I met you, Liam. I didn't plan for this. He stood abruptly, chair scraping the floor. "Excuse me." And just like that, the man who once called her his safe place walked away into the crowd. Ethan watched her crumble, and for a split second, just a flicker, guilt crossed his face, but it was gone just as fast. Because for Ethan Hale, this wasn't about love anymore. It was about revenge. And Sophie was just collateral damage. She fled the ballroom, heels echoing down the empty corridor. Her breath trembled as she pushed open the garden doors, stepping back into the night that had once promised peace. Now, it only whispered betrayal. Somewhere behind her, a door clicked shut. She wasn't alone. "You shouldn't have come back here, Sophie." The night was silent, almost too silent. The sound of her heels against the cobblestone path echoed like a heartbeat in the dark. Sophie turned sharply, scanning the shadows. "Who's there?" A silhouette emerged beneath the ivy-covered archway. Not Ethan, not Liam. A woman, mid-30s, sharp eyes, tailored black dress that didn't belong to any guest Sophie had seen earlier. She stepped closer, the dim light catching a thin scar on her cheek. "You really shouldn't have come back here, Miss Lane." Sophie froze. "I'm sorry. Who are you?" The woman smirked. "You can call me Harper. I used to work for the Whitfords. Still do, in a way." Her voice was smooth but carried a weight of warning. "Then why are you hiding in the garden?" "Because I don't want anyone to see me talking to you." Sophie frowned. "About what?" Harper's gaze flicked toward the mansion. "You think Ethan's little stunt tonight was personal. It wasn't. He's trying to draw Liam out, to destroy him publicly. And you're the easiest way to do it." Sophie stepped back. "Why should I believe you? Harper sighed, pulling a folded photograph from her coat. She held it out. Under the dim garden lights, Sophie saw it clearly. A black and white photo of Ethan and Liam's late father, shaking hands with a man Sophie recognized instantly. Her father. Her breath caught. She hadn't seen that image in years. "Where did you get this?" "From Ethan's office. He's been collecting files, pictures, anything that ties your father to the Whitford family fortune. The old man covered up something that could ruin the entire empire if it ever came out. My father's dead. Whatever happened, it's over. Not for Ethan. He blames your father for what happened to his brother." "What are you talking about?" "Liam's right here. I'm not talking about Liam. I'm talking about their younger brother, Noah." The name hit Sophie like a blow. She remembered it now, vaguely mentioned once, then never again. Liam had said his family lost someone years ago, but no one had ever told her how. "What does Ethan think my father did?" "He thinks your father took money meant for a charity trust, money that was supposed to fund Noah's treatment. The boy died because it never reached the hospital." The truth, or what felt like it, hung heavy in the air. Sophie's heart raced. Her father, a thief, a killer by negligence? It didn't make sense. My father wasn't perfect, but he wouldn't do that. There has to be more. There is. Ethan's about to go public, tomorrow. He's arranged a press leak right after the wedding. He'll take Liam down, and when your name surfaces, you'll go down with him. Sophie stepped closer, gripping Harper's arm. "Then help me stop him, please." Harper hesitated. "If I do, you didn't hear this from me. And you need to be careful who you trust." She leaned in closer. "Because not everyone under this roof is who they pretend to be." Sophie turned back toward the mansion, her mind spinning. Every glance, every whispered conversation now felt sinister. And somewhere upstairs, behind closed doors, Ethan Hale was making a call that would change everything. "Yes, it's ready. Once the vows are exchanged, I want the files released." He paused. "Don't worry. By tomorrow afternoon, the Whitford name will be ashes." But what Ethan didn't know was that Sophie wasn't the only one with a secret, because Harper wasn't just a former employee. She was the one who had forged the documents that killed Noah Whitford's trust. And now, someone else had discovered it. Morning came wrapped in thunder. The sky above the Whitford estate hung low, gray and heavy, like it already knew what was coming. Inside, chaos brewed under layers of polite smiles. The wedding planners scurried through the halls. Florists replaced rain-soaked arrangements. The chef barked orders in the kitchen, and Sophie Lane stood in front of the mirror, her reflection pale, her pulse uneven. The night had changed everything. Ethan had a plan to destroy the Whitfords. Harper had hinted at a buried truth darker than anyone imagined, and Sophie was the only one caught between them. "Sophie, we need to talk." His voice, cold now, stripped of warmth, the voice of a man who'd seen something he couldn't unsee. She hesitated before opening the door. Liam stood there, still immaculate in a dark gray suit, but there was something in his eyes, hurt, confusion, and the faintest flicker of anger. "Tell me the truth. How long were you and Ethan together?" 3 years. It ended long before I met you." He crossed his arms. "Did you know who I was when we met?" She hesitated. That half-second of silence was enough. "You did." "Not at first, but when I found out I thought it was fate. I didn't plan this, Liam." He looked away, jaw clenched. The storm outside cracked open with thunder as if mirroring the tension between them. "My brother's already talking to the press. I heard him in the study this morning. If he drags you into this, I can't protect you." "Then stop him. Please, for both of us." He shook his head. "You don't get it. Ethan doesn't care about me anymore. He wants blood. He wants vengeance." Sophie stepped closer, her voice trembling. "Then let me talk to him. Let me fix it." "It's too late for that." He turned to leave, but Sophie grabbed his hand. "Liam, please. There's something you don't know about your brother." He stopped. "What do you mean?" "He's lying about what happened to Noah." Liam's head turned sharply. "What are you talking about?" Sophie's voice was low, urgent. "Harper told me last night. Your brother thinks my father stole the money meant for Noah's treatment, but it's not true. Someone else forged those documents." Liam's expression darkened. "Why, she wouldn't say, but she's hiding something, Liam, something big." Before Liam could respond, a sudden boom echoed through the estate. Not thunder, something heavier. The lights flickered, screams from downstairs. Sophie rushed to the balcony and looked down. Dozens of guests were standing near the grand staircase. At the center of the commotion, Ethan. He was gripping a laptop, security guards swarming around him, voices shouting. He tried to access the press servers. Liam stormed down the stairs. "Ethan, what the hell is this?" Ethan raised his hands, his voice calm but sharp. "Just finishing what our father started, brother. The truth deserves to be told." "This isn't truth, it's revenge." "Maybe, but at least I'm honest about what I want." Liam lunged toward him, but the guards stepped between them. The storm raged outside, lightning flashing across the tall windows, thunder shaking the floor. And then, over the chaos, came Harper's voice. From the second-floor landing, she shouted, "Stop! He's telling the wrong story!" Every eye turned to her. Harper's hair was wet from the rain, her face pale, trembling, but her voice was clear. "It wasn't Sophie's father. It was me. I forged the documents that drained Noah's trust." Gasps erupted. Ethan froze. Liam's mouth fell open. Sophie felt her knees weaken. "You expect us to believe that?" "Believe what you want. But your father made me do it. He wanted the money moved offshore before the investigation started. I took the blame. Noah's death wasn't Sophie's father's fault. It was yours." The crowd erupted. The Whitford family's pristine image shattered in a single moment. Ethan stumbled back, face white as marble. Liam looked between them both, his brother, his fiancée, his family, realizing that everything he knew was a lie. Then, Silence again. Only the sound of rain against glass. And somewhere, faintly, the echo of police sirens approaching. The truth had finally surfaced. But in this house, truth was just another weapon, and before the storm passed, someone would use it. The Whitford estate, once a symbol of wealth and power, now buzzed with chaos. Flashing blue lights bathed the marble floors. Reporters pushed against the gates outside, shouting names through the storm. Inside, Harper sat on the floor, shaking. Her confession hung heavy in the air like smoke. Ethan stared at her, eyes empty, jaw trembling, not from rage anymore, but disbelief. The woman who once worked for his father had just burned their entire legacy to the ground. Harper Bennett, you're under arrest for falsifying financial documents and obstruction of justice. Harper didn't resist. She lifted her wrists, voice soft. I already told you. I didn't do it for me. Sophie stood frozen near the staircase, heart pounding. This was the moment she dreaded, the moment when the truth came out, but not the peace that was supposed to follow it. Ethan stepped forward, shaking his head. No, you're lying again. You're covering for her, for Sophie. Ethan, stop it. I had nothing to do with your family's corruption. Harper just proved that. She proved nothing. My father trusted her, just like he trusted you. Liam stepped in between them, his voice cutting through the shouting. Enough! This isn't the time or place, Harper confessed. Let the police handle it. But Ethan wasn't listening. He was unraveling, years of bitterness, loss, and obsession boiling over. You think this ends with her arrest? You think this fixes what happened to Noah? Nothing will ever fix that. Ethan turned slowly, eyes locked on his brother. You knew, didn't you? You knew our father wasn't clean. Liam didn't answer. His silence said enough. And you were just going to marry her, while pretending none of this ever happened. I loved her. I still do. That sentence was the final crack. Ethan lunged. 2 guards held him back before his fists landed. You'll regret this, Liam. Both of you will. As Harper was led through the grand doorway, she turned to Sophie, eyes glassy, voice trembling. They'll come for you next. Be ready. What do you mean? But Harper didn't answer. She disappeared into the rain, swallowed by flashing lights and camera flashes. The wedding was called off. Guests left in silence. Liam stood alone by the window as dawn broke, his suit rumpled, his hands still trembling. He'd lost everything in a single night, his family, his brother, and maybe even Sophie. Sophie walked toward him barefoot, soaked from the rain. She wanted to speak, to explain, to comfort, but the words wouldn't come. Did you know about Harper's role in any of this? No, I swear I didn't. He turned finally, eyes red. I want to believe you, but every time I look at you, I see another secret waiting to surface. That broke her. She reached out, but he stepped back. Go home, Sophie. And you? I'm going to find out what really happened to my brother. Outside, Ethan watched from the shadows near the garden path. Rain dripped from his coat as his phone buzzed. He answered quietly. Did she tell them everything? No, not yet. Good, then you still have leverage. Don't waste it. The call ended. Ethan's reflection shimmered in the puddle beneath his feet, distorted, fractured, unrecognizable. He wasn't just a man seeking revenge anymore. He was a man becoming his father. And as dawn broke over the Whitford estate, one thing was clear. The storm wasn't over. It was only getting started. The Whitford mansion was no longer alive with celebration. The scent of roses and champagne had been replaced by the cold trace of police tape and damp air. Liam hadn't slept. His tuxedo was wrinkled, his tie discarded, and his eyes were bloodshot from reading. For hours, he'd been in his father's old study, digging through drawers, locked boxes, and dusty files that hadn't been touched in years, because if Harper had lied once, she could have lied again, and if she'd told the truth, Then his family's fortune was built on the bones of betrayal. He found it by accident. A false panel behind the bottom drawer of his father's desk. Inside, a brown envelope. Unmarked. Old. He opened it carefully. Inside were 3 things. A check made out to a children's hospital, never deposited. A contract between Whitford Holdings and Lane Associates, and a black and white photo of a hospital room. The patient's wristband read, Noah Whitford. "My father never sent the money." Liam's voice broke. He looked down at the date on the check. It matched the week Noah died. And at the bottom corner of the contract, a signature. Not from Sophie's father, but from Harper Bennett. The truth hit him like a wave. Harper hadn't been covering up for Sophie's family. She'd stolen from his own. And when Noah died, she made sure the blame fell on the Lanes. He closed the folder, his hands trembling. Everything Ethan had believed, every ounce of hatred he'd carried for Sophie, was built on a lie Liam turned. Sophie stood in the doorway, her hair still damp, eyes swollen from crying. "You didn't sleep." "No, couldn't." She stepped closer, hesitating as if the air itself were fragile. "Are you still angry with me?" Liam shook his head slowly. "No, not anymore. But you need to see this." Her fingers trembled as she flipped through the documents. Her father's firm name, Harper's forged signature, the hospital photo. When she reached the end, her knees nearly gave out. "She framed my family." "Yes, and Ethan's been feeding off that lie for years." Sophie's face hardened. The fear faded, replaced by something colder. Resolve. "Then we tell him the truth." "He won't listen. Not after everything." "Then we make him listen." The plan was simple, but dangerous. They'd gather proof. The hospital records, the bank statements, the voicemails Harper left before her arrest. And then they'd confront Ethan, publicly. At the one place he couldn't hide behind power, reputation, or lies. His father's memorial gala that evening, because if the truth had destroyed Sophie's peace, then it was time it destroyed Ethan's delusion. By nightfall, the Whitford Memorial was in full swing. Every powerful investor, socialite, and press member was there, unaware that the empire they admired was seconds away from cracking open. Sophie stood in the center of the ballroom, dressed in a black gown that shimmered like glass. Her calm exterior hid the storm within. Across the room, Ethan arrived late. Sharp suit, controlled smile, every step exuding arrogance. He still thought he held the upper hand. He didn't. Liam took the mic. His voice echoed across the hall. "Tonight, we honor my father's legacy, but we also confront what he left behind." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Ethan's smile faltered. "For years, I believed a lie, that the Lane family stole from us, that Sophie's father cost my brother his life." Gasps. Cameras flashed. "Tonight, I'm setting the record straight." He held up the original contract. Harper's forged signature, the uncashed check, the missing hospital payment. Ethan froze, color draining from his face. "You're lying." "No, Ethan. Harper was the one who took it all. She stole from your father, and she framed mine." The crowd went silent. Ethan looked from Sophie to Liam, the realization cutting deep. All that anger, all that hate, built on a foundation of deceit. No. That's not possible. But the proof was undeniable. The documents, the timestamps, the recordings, they played across the projector, exposing everything. And when the final image appeared, Harper's confession video recorded in custody, Ethan staggered back, defeated. "I falsified the documents. I took the money, but I wasn't alone." The room gasped again. Liam's head shot up. Not alone? Someone else ordered it. Someone higher up. And with that final line, a new mystery was born. The real puppeteer was still out there, someone powerful enough to buy Harper's silence, until now. Liam turned to Sophie. Her eyes were wide, her lips parted in disbelief. "It's not over." No, it wasn't, because as the recording ended, a single text appeared on Ethan's phone screen, one that made his blood run cold. "You should have kept quiet. Now they'll all know what you did." The truth had finally surfaced, but so had something far more dangerous. The past hadn't just been corrupted, it had been controlled, and the person pulling the strings was still watching. The truth had spread faster than the rain outside. By morning, every major outlet carried the story. The Whitford empire, the forged contracts, Harper's confession, the lies that fueled years of pain. But there was one truth still buried, the name of the person behind it all. Liam stood inside his father's private penthouse study. The air smelled faintly of whiskey and old leather. He had read every file, every contract, except one, the one locked inside his father's safe. The combination was simple: his late mother's birthday. Click. The door opened with a soft mechanical hum. Inside, a single folder marked with two initials: E.H. Liam froze. He'd seen those letters before, but not on a document. On a cufflink, Ethan Hale, the man who claimed to be the victim, the man who swore he was fighting for justice. He wasn't the pawn, he was the architect. Liam opened the folder. Inside were transactions, dozens of them, wire transfers between Ethan's shell company and Harper's consulting firm. Every payment timed right before another rumor, another forged report, another move against the Lane family. It was Ethan, all along. "You found it, didn't you?" Liam turned to her, eyes filled with disbelief and heartbreak. "I didn't want to believe it. He used us both." She moved closer, her voice trembling but steady. "When I left years ago, he told me it was for my own good, that he was protecting me, but he wasn't protecting anyone. He was building an empire from the ruins of our pain." Liam clenched his jaw. He manipulated the entire family, just to take control. "I see you've opened the file." Ethan's voice was smooth, detached, like the rain outside meant nothing to him. "You should have stopped when you had the chance. The empire was never your father's, Liam. It was mine the moment he signed that first deal. He just didn't know it yet. You destroyed everything, for what? Control? Control is just the surface. You of all people should understand what power does to a man. Your father knew. He started it. I just finished what he couldn't." Liam's voice was quiet, but every word cut like glass. "You built an empire on lies, but tonight, it ends. You think people care about truth? They care about money, about image. And you've lost both." A slow breath from Liam, then, "Maybe. But you forgot one thing, Ethan." "Oh? What's that?" "You taught me how to destroy a man's empire." The line disconnected, and as the rain fell harder, a series of alerts began pinging across every financial feed in the country. Liam had just triggered a data leak. Every fraudulent contract, every hidden account, every whisper of Ethan's corruption, sent to regulators, journalists, and the FBI. By nightfall, Ethan Hale was no longer the face of power. He was the face of ruin. His arrest made headlines across every network. The empire he tried to steal collapsed in a single evening, and the world finally saw who he really was. Weeks later, the Whitford mansion was quiet again. No more parties, no more secrets, just peace. Sophie stood on the balcony, watching the sun rise over the vineyard. Liam joined her, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. For the first time in years, she smiled without fear. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if we'd never met?" Liam smiled faintly. "Then we'd still be pretending." She laughed softly. "Pretending what?" "That we don't believe in second chances. The world had taken everything from them once, but in the ashes of betrayal, they found something real, not built on wealth or secrets or lies, but on the truth, the kind of truth that costs everything and gives back even more. Sometimes, love doesn't find you when life is perfect. It finds you when everything falls apart, and you finally have nothing left to hide.